So, because today is the launch of Our Flag Means Death Season 2 in the US, and also because I've done something really weird to my neck, and I can only hold my neck this side, I'm going to tell you about how Our Flag Means Death made me realise that I am autistic. So a lot of my friends for a long time were trying to get me to watch Our Flag Means Death, and I said, yeah, it sounds good, sounds great, good for you. And then one weekend, my partner was away, I had a free weekend, and I was like, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to watch this pirate show everyone's talking about. So I sat down, I pressed play on Saturday morning, and by the end of the weekend, I was a changed human being. I watched that show twice over in 48 hours, and then I went onto the internet and I read every single article I could find. I listened to every podcast I could find about it. I read fan theories, I looked at fan art, I went onto IMDb and I found out every single actor and producer who was part of it and looked them all up. I followed them on Instagram. I became obsessed with David Jenkins, the creator. I went completely bananas for Our Flag Means Death. So I was completely in pirate world. I was thinking about the pirates. I was talking about the pirates. I was telling my friends about the pirates, even though they'd already told me about the pirates often. And one of my friends said to me as a joke, "Welcome to the hyperfixation." And I heard that word and I thought, that's strange. Because hyperfixation is a word that I know perfectly well, is something that is associated with neurodivergence, something that neurodivergent people do. And I thought, well, I'm not having a hyperfixation. That's not what's happening to me. But if it isn't what's happening to me, why does it sound so right? Why is it so right for how I'm feeling right now about this TV show? Now, this was the point that I started to reassess basically my entire life. I am somebody who has a lot of neurodivergent friends, funnily enough. I had read a lot of stories about neurodivergent people, seen a lot of media about neurodivergent characters. And whenever I had done that, I had always noticed the differences between me and those characters. There's a wonderful book called A Kind of Spark by Elle McNichol that is about a girl called Addie who's autistic, and she loves sharks. And I read that book and I was like, this is a great book, this is wonderful. But Addie and I are completely different because you see, Addie likes sharks and I do not like sharks. Nothing similar about us at all. But of course, post Our Flag Means Death, I realized that I had been making a really crucial error. I had been looking for differences and I'd found them, where actually I should have been looking for a pattern of similarities, and there was a lot there. Because Addie and I might have different opinions about sharks, but we both have the same way of liking things. We both like things in a very intense way. And that was the thing I should have seen. That was the connection between us instead of the difference. And I also thought back to my own stories, because of course I write the Murder Most Unladylike mysteries. I've been writing them for 10 years. One of my characters, Daisy Wells, is somebody who fans have always looked at and seen as autistic. They've been asking me for years whether Daisy is autistic, and I've always said, well, yeah, she probably is, or you could see her that way, because she's partly based on Sherlock Holmes. Now that's a character who often people also read as autistic, and I think that's probably a correct reading. So you could see that Daisy's autistic because Sherlock Holmes is. But now I started looking at that and thinking, is that the only reason why people are reading Daisy's autistic? Is that the only reason why she was written as autistic? So I was going away and doing a lot of thinking, so all these questions were going through my head, and I was doing a lot of reading online and reading books as well. And one of the things that I read that was most helpful to me was a piece of writing by Temple Grandin, who's an autistic writer or autistic person who has written a lot of really influential books. The piece of writing was about how she daydreams, and she talked about being able, when she wants to think about something, remember something, she pulls it up in her memory, a film of the thing that happened, and watches it over again as a film, like behind her eyes, as the way she daydreams. And I was like, but that's how I daydream. When I want to remember something, when I think about something, I pull it up out of my memory bank and I literally, I'll watch it like a film. And I'm writing my stories as well. I'm writing about Daisy and Hazel. I imagine the way that they move through the world, the scenes they're in, the people they're talking to. I imagine like I'm watching a film sort of from their eyes. And that is how, that's how I write my books. I thought that was normal. Thought that was what everyone did, how everyone daydreams, or everyone, writes. And I started wondering if that was actually true. And I started talking to my friends about how they daydream. And it turned out that a lot of the people who are neurodivergent have quite a similar way of daydreaming as I do, and as Temple Grandin does. And everyone who is neurotypical doesn't have that way of dreaming. And I was completely fascinated. I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm onto something here. So I started doing lots more online quizzes, the kind of diagnostic quizzes that help diagnose neurodivergence. And again, whatever I did, they kind of kept coming back, neurodivergent, autistic. And at this point, I decided I wanted to go and get diagnosed. Now, diagnosis is not for everyone, obviously. Some people just don't want to, which is completely valid. Some people are trying to, but they're stuck somewhere in that extremely long NHS waiting list, which is getting longer and longer as more and more people realize they're neurodivergent. Of course, getting it done privately is very expensive. But it is something that I decided to do. As I say, if you don't do it, you're completely valid still, but I decided I wanted to do it. And it's something that I think I am very glad that I did. It's really given me sort of new insight into both my own brain, the way I think, why certain things are easy for me or hard for me, why I act the way I do, why I am the way I am, and that's just so wonderful. But also into my characters. I'm seeing all of the characters I've been writing for so long in a totally new way, in much a richer, fuller way, and it's really, really lovely. Daisy is definitely autistic, partly because she's like Sherlock Holmes. I did write her to be like Sherlock Holmes, but also because she's like me, because I wrote her, and I'm autistic too. Actually, I think that she's ADHD, which is autistic and ADHD. She's got that sort of nervous, chaotic energy. She moves so fast, moves faster than everybody else, but she also has that intense focus on things and real obsession about her special interests, one of which is, of course, murder. Hazel, I think, is autistic. She has a really strong sense of justice, and is really fascinated by the world, by humanity, in the way that I am, and I think a lot of autistic people are. My character Nuala is also autistic. She spends a lot of time thinking about acting. She's a real actress, and that is partly because she's always masking, and that is something that I do, a lot of autistic people do as well, and Nuala does that by acting at all times. And finally, we've got May, who I think is ADHD. She, like me, she cannot whisper. She thinks she's talking quietly, and actually she's talking at a really loud volume, which is something that happens to me quite a lot. And she has a lot of my nervous energy, and my sort of like up and down emotions. And I think that is something that May has as well, that I gave her. So that's my story, and that's how Our Flag Means Death led me to this, I think, amazing revelation about me and my characters, and I'm so glad that it did. If you haven't seen Our Flag Means Death, definitely go see it. It's fantastic. It is all about pirates. They're all queer. It's really funny. It's really charming. It's really heartwarming. It's also very emotional at times. Very sort of surprisingly sort of lovely and deep. So I am a huge fan. Now, I'm sure David Jenkins, the creator, did not think that he was going to put this out in the world when he created Our Flag Means Death. But for me, it's a very special, important show because of what it has done to me, as well as how good it is. So do go watch it if you can. If you're able to watch the second season, go see it. If you're not, watch the first season, which is up on BBC iPlayer, I think, at the moment. I love it. Obviously, I do. It's one of my hyperfixations. So happy Our Flag Means Death Day.